time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Well, welcome everybody. We are at the evening tea time and we are on the last tea time of September. And I have the amazing Yasmin Azar sitting in the back, and she's going to bring her story that she wrote called Stay Daughter. We're going to talk about Muslim and culture and the beliefs and traditions and all of that good stuff and understand her true story as she shares with all of us tonight. So before we get started, we'll do the disclaimer and all that good stuff, a little bit of bio of Yasmin, and then we're going to get Yasmin in here, and she's going to spill a different kind of tea with us tonight. So we're going to do the TEA with Yasmin, and she's going to flow it in a different style. So the disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz, myself, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any tea time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, it may bring forth dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All tea time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all tea times are done on a Thursday, 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. That's right, we do 3 shows in one day. That's how Miss Liz rolls here. Now, a little bit on my guess. Well, we're taking a trip to Sri Lanka. That's right. But now she's in the United States. But we're going to take you back. As you've seen in the intro, we need to understand different cultures, different communities, and different traditions in order to understand why people have the lives that they have before we start adding judgment to our stories and to other people. Always understand, and that's what Miss Liz is doing here with Tea Time, is I'm bringing different guests from around the globe who share their stories, who make an impact, and who share strong TEAs with all of you. So a little bit on Yasmin. Yasmin Azad is the author of Stay Daughter, an engaging memoir of how a young Muslim girl grew up in Sri Lanka in the 1950s and 60s, and how she came to America after seeing what happened when cultures collide. Kirkus Reviews named her book as one of the best of the year. Azad was among the first group of girls in her Muslim community in Sri Lanka to go away to university. Stay Daughter draws on her experiences growing up in a close-knit, conservative society, which had to deal with the challenge of reconciling the rules of Islamic I'll get her to say because I can't say that and I don't want to butcher it, with the freedom and innovations of the modern world. Born and raised in Fort, Sri Lanka, previously Ceylon, by a traditional Muslim family, she lived in what was a former colony fortress, inhabited by Muslim, Buddhists, Hindus, and the Christian descendants of Europeans who had colonized the islands. Muslims are a 10% majority population in Sri Lanka, which is a Buddhist majority nation. Her primary education was at Catholic schools run by Irish nuns, but her favorite teacher was Hindu. She came to America in the late 1970s and lived in Connecticut. She and her husband moved to Massachusetts and raised their three children there. Azar has worked for over 20 years as an award winning mental health counselor. She has a deep interest in the special and emotional repercussions of society, both positive and negative. When women are raised in highly in, individual, in, in individualistic cultures and as opposed to these that stress the importance of family and community. She has been interviewed and featured in numerous media outlets, including BBC World News, the National Magazine, Perspective Magazine, Daily News in Sri Lanka, and Sunday's Island in Sri Lanka. Asa earned her BA in English from University of Ceylon, MA in English from University of Connecticut, and MA in psycholo- psychology from Finchburg State College. She lectures in English for 3 years at the University of Kalian. I'll get her to say that in Sri Lanka. Again, I don't want to say it wrong. When she's not writing essays and articles, she is gardening or practicing mindful meditation. And she was raised in Walton, MA. And for more on that, you can go to her website, which you'll see on the screen during the tea time. Let me get her in here. I wanted to read her whole bio. I don't usually read the whole bios, but I wanted to read her whole bio so you guys could get a perspective of who she is and why she's here today with me and having tea. So let me get her in here. Welcome, Yasmin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I can't hear you. Why can't I hear you?
Oh,
Oh, I hear you now.
all right.
I got you. So, Yasmin, let's start off with you as a little girl and who you are today. And then we're going to get into the book of Stay Daughter and all of that good stuff. And I have a bunch of questions here for you. But I really wanted to read your whole bio just so that the listeners could get a perspective of your life and how many years back we're going to be going. So people can see that maybe today the traditions or religion has changed in your country from back in the 50s and 60s. So,
Mhm.
Jasmine, share a little bit who you were as a little girl.
I think I had an unusual childhood in that I was a little Muslim girl going to a Catholic school. My best friend was Christian, and my favorite teacher was Hindu. So, ever since I was very young, I think I was exposed to a whole variety of cultures and religions. And I couldn't identify with any particular religion. I felt like every one of them had something interesting and good to offer. And so, I didn't I especially being in a Catholic school and having a Christian friend, I wanted more for myself than most Muslim girls at that age, I think. So I read voraciously. I saw that girls who are not Muslim, sometimes they set their hearts on, educating themselves, maybe going beyond school, secondary school to university. And somewhere along the line, I said, I want that for myself too. And my story is that, I'll just go back just a minute. About 100 years before when I was born, my grandmother couldn't read or write. She could hardly count beyond 10. She didn't know that the months changed, according to the Gregorian calendar. How she knew a new month had come was she would look up at the sky at night, and if there was a faint crescent moon, she said, oh, that's a new month. She was following the lunar calendar. And she became a widow when she was very young, but because she had no education at all, she lost her property. Because without education, she couldn't negotiate the world. She didn't know anything about wills or affidavits or anything. And one of her relatives had come and said, sign, put your thumbprint down here. And she did. And she lost a lot of property. So, about 100 years after that, me, her granddaughter, my story is that I asked my father permission to go to the university, and he was shocked because Muslim girls in my generation didn't even go out of their homes. What do you mean you want to go to the university? And so that's basically the story. He did allow me to go because he loved me. Um, and so my story is that I can, my grandmother couldn't read or write. My mother could do it a little bit. She was allowed to go to school for about third grade, and I became like one of the first in my community and my family women to go to the university.
So Yasmin, in your country, is it looked down on if women get educated?
Not anymore, Liz. Thankfully. So this I'm talking about. So I was at, I and other Muslim women my age were like in the forefront. A few of us, saying we wanted more. And at that time, I remember when I asked my father about going to the university, his first reaction was, won't you be ashamed to be living outside your home with strangers? Because that was considered not the thing to do. And gradually that has changed, and more girls are going to the university. But as you might know, Liz, like if you think of the Taliban in Afghanistan, the main thing they go after, or one of the main things they've been going after, is girls' education, right? They've closed the schools, they don't allow girls to go to work. So that this issue is still very present in many parts of the world, especially in more like tribal parts of the world. um, and that in one way, that's why I wrote the book. I think we need to pay attention to that. We need to, education is so important to give you some agency in the world, right? To be able
Yeah.
to negotiate the world. So I won't say it's like the way in my country and places, other countries, in Muslim countries. We've progressed a lot, but not far enough.
So since you've left Sri Lanka, what
Mhm.
changes have you seen in your community?
So what I've seen is a very sort of a strange thing. Girls are going more to school, but in the last, I would say 20, 30 years, there has been what's called a Muslim sort of a revivalist movement where people have become more conservative and religious. And, I never wore a veil. I mean, I never covered myself from head to toe. But many of my many young girls now in Sri Lanka are doing that because it's like they've gone back to that kind of dress. They want to go back to a certain, uh, previous way of dressing and behaving. One of the interesting things is if you Google, like if you think of Afghanistan or Iran and you Google university students in the 1970s, you will see pictures of Afghan university students in mini skirts in the 1970s, in mini
Wow.
skirts. There are girls, Iranian students in mini skirts. You won't find that in Afghanistan anymore. You won't find that in Iran anymore either. So in some ways, yes, there's been a lot of progress, but in some other ways, it's kind of like a turning back. And you might remember about a few months ago, was it? About 6 months ago, there were these huge riots in Iran
Hmm.
about
Yes.
girls not wearing. So that's there too. It's they both those traits are there.
Well, and there was something going on with cutting their hair as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
So what does it have to do with the hair? Like, is it
Well, in traditional women, traditional communities, women tend not to have short hair because it's more like a man's way of dressing.
okay?
Even if you look at some very conservative Christian communities, you find that the women have long hair, right? They don't cut it. So that's part of it, being more feminine and more conservative by having long hair. And when those Iranian girls cut their hair, they were protesting that.
Yeah, because I was watching a lot of those protests where they were
Mm-hmm,
cutting their
mm-hmm,
hair,
mm-hmm.
and I believe one woman got murdered because of it.
Yeah, she got killed because she was. I think they suspected that of the that she was not properly veiled, and when they took her to the police station, I don't know, what happened, but then she died there, and that's what sparked the protests.
So is that close to where you grew up?
Not so close, but the same culture because we're all Muslim. So it's not geographically that close. It would be almost like Boston and maybe California, something like that. But we have the same, basically the same culture, the same Islamic culture.
So Yasmin, we have a question here for you.
Mhm.
Are the rules the same for the Muslim daughters as they are for the sons?
No, no, absolutely not. The women have always been secluded. The women have always been confined. Well, when I was, my grandmother, for instance, didn't ever go to school. They were confined to their homes. They wear the veil, you've seen that, right, from head to toe. The men have the freedom to leave their homes and go to work and, go to school and all that. So there's a huge gender divide. It was much more pronounced long ago. I'm not. It's much better now in many countries, but there's still those different rules.
So I have a question here from a viewer. They want to know if your parents have visited you since you left Sri Lanka.
My mother did. My father had passed away when so my mother did when my second son was born. She did come to the United States, yeah, to help me. Um,
So how was the culture change for her?
One of the things that, so, when I came, obviously everything physically is different. You have all these skyscrapers and cars and all that. But I think what struck me and what even struck my mother is, so Muslim culture is a very, very community based culture. There's lots of interaction among people. It's a little bit almost like the Hasidic Jews, how they all get together.
Yeah.
So what my mother and I both observed is there's, like families are a little bit more isolated, I would say, in the United States, whereas in traditional communities like ours, that one that I grew up in, they're much more close knit. There's a much more close knit community. And I think that has happened, it's even more now than before here, I
Yeah.
think from what I've read, so that's the thing that struck me. And when I went on to be a mental health counselor and I was, like seated with my clients, that's again the thing that struck me. Sometimes I wanted to ask, where is your family? Where is your community? What kind of supports do you have or don't have? And that's, so my book, while on the one hand I do, write about the lack of education and opportunity for women and the, the need for basic human rights, I also try to portray that there was something really good in the community too, which is the family, community, sense of belonging. And it wasn't all about oppression. There's something good in traditional societies.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Yasmin, because I live in Canada and you're in the
Mhm,
United States. And I say that all the time. Where's the community? Where is the
mhm,
family? Where's the unity? You,
mhm,
you look back at the African countries or
mhm.
the European countries, there's a lot of community connection. There's
Yes,
gatherings, there's,
yes.
and it's not just special occasions. It's,
No,
you have each other's back. The
yes,
lifestyle is completely different, and I'm glad that you brought that up because there is a positive and a negative of every story out there.
absolutely.
And I really want the viewers and listeners out there to understand, like, just because you move to a different country doesn't mean that you don't value the community and family back home.
No, no.
It just means that you're looking for more. You're looking for to better educate yourself,
Right.
to open the doors, to bring that awareness, because without you coming to America, Yasmin, we would not know about Sri Lanka's
Yes,
traditions and culture. We need to have have individuals come to our countries in order to teach us, so that
right.
we don't judge, right? So we can
Exactly.
understand. uh, and that's what I got because I read a little bit of your book with the PDF file and that,
Mhm.
and it was the community that really touched me.
Yes.
Was you were looking for just education, but you already had the community at home. So coming to the United States and seeing that there was not that community and that unity, how did that affect you?
So in a way, in one way, when you're young, you kind of feel like, oh, there's this modern life that that's all you want. But then what happened is, because as I said, I was a mental health counselor, and just by living here, it may, in some ways, while at the same time, I want women's rights, I also was able to see what was good in my community in a way that I would not have if I hadn't come here. Because sometimes you have to see a place that doesn't have that for you to recognize, oh, back home, this is so prevalent, people don't have this kind of isolation. And I don't know whether you know, because you're from Canada, but the United States Surgeon General, in about 3 months ago, in May of this year, sent out an advisory about, about what he called the epidemic of isolation and loneliness, and how that impacts people's mental health and physical health. And even like in 2018, the British Prime Minister, May Theresa, she established a Minister of Loneliness. So I feel like you said, listen, I'm so glad you made that point, that even while we want things to improve, we don't want to throw the baby with the bathwater. We want to say, yes, these things need to be, people need more freedom, but let's not just let's not dismiss and let go what's good in traditional communities.
Well, I'm so glad that you're in the United States, Jasmine, and that you have brought your culture to the States for others to enjoy it. And I'm really on this. Isolation is a mental health destroyer. It will take lives faster than any war out there because the war
Hmm.
with the mind will take you faster than a gun any day.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that you're a mental health counselor, Yasmin,
Thank
because you bring that flavor of flow of unity and connection and community. And then you see your clients coming in and saying, like, where's your family? Where's your support system? Where,
you.
how do you get to this point?
Hmm.
And Canada and United States, we don't have that unity. We all say we got each other's back, but we don't. We
Hmm.
really need to look at
Hmm.
other countries and the
Hmm.
way that they unionize and the way
Hmm.
that they bring the community together. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
with hardly anything in their pockets, there's still the community.
Hmm.
And
hmm
that's the richest riches out there is unity and connection and that. And I love the title of your book. It's called Stay Daughter. Now, how did you get that title, Yasmin?
So, in the Quran, which is the holy book of the Muslims, there's a verse there that says, stay in your homes and do not display yourselves. So it's asking women to stay. And in a way, what my father and my family and community also wanted at one time is for their daughters to stay with us, stay in the. And what happened is that many of us didn't stay. And I don't mean even just geographically didn't stay. I mean even our ideas and attitudes didn't stay where it was. Which is necessary, I think, because you do need that. So that's where I got that idea, stay daughter. And the stay is mostly for daughters, not for sons. So
I,
it's,
I when I read the title of Stay Daughter, the first thing I got was she allowed to leave?
yes.
So do a lot of the readers that read your book, Yasmin, think that?
Yes, and I think I was allowed to leave, and that's the other part of, connected to what we were talking about, Liz, is that, my father, at first he refused. He said, absolutely not. You've not been allowed to go out of, like out of your house by yourself. How can you go to the university? When he saw how unhappy I was, he finally relented. He said, I don't approve, but don't can't bear to see you unhappy. And I don't, because it's a memoir, I couldn't really expand it. But I think that's the other thing that I want people in the West to see, to recognize about Muslim communities, is that there is the same love that parents have for their children. It's not all about patriarchy and oppression. And even in the United States or even in the West, sometimes a child might be the force that changes a family's attitude to something, like whether it's a gay relationship, or if it's like, say, an interracial marriage or something. The love that the parents have for their child will make them change their mind even at first. So that happened with my father and many fathers. Their love for their daughters allowed them to see beyond the cultural norm, and say, I think it might be good for my daughter and for all daughters to have this freedom. So.
I think it's truly amazing that you're here, Yasmin, because I'm big on girls' education
Mhm,
and boys' education as well. Education is important, you know, but the girls leaders, girls coming forward and being treated the same way, you know. And again, when I read the title, I was like, oh, is there control? And society has put this stigma on the African countries that there's a lot of control.
mhm,
And by you sharing your story in your memoir, you're saying, no, there isn't that form of control that society is putting out there. And I think society is putting a lot of different bad bugs out there on
mhm,
cultures.
mhm.
And then people right away, they assume and they judge what they don't understand, right? They're like, well,
Right,
why are you coming here? Like, what are you bringing here? You know, so we kind of get that pushing back. And I
right.
love that you look at the negative and the positive, because we need negative in order to get positive.
Absolutely, yes. And also, if you want to reach somebody, and that you learn this as a therapist. If you want to reach a culture and say, you should give edu you should give your girls opportunities to educate themselves. You don't reach them by saying there's nothing good in your culture. You don't reach a human being by saying there's nothing good about you and you need to change
Yeah.
completely. But once you recognize, and I feel like once you recognize something good, yes, there's so much good in your culture. But I think this part needs, maybe we can change this without getting rid of everything else. You're much more likely to have a conversation that's productive.
Right. And it's to break that stigma, the
Hmm.
stigma of what society tells us what it should look like or how it
Hmm.
should be. And it's
Hmm.
just like mental illness, right? A lot of
Hmm.
people put judgment on it before
Yes.
even understanding it. The person might look fine on the outside, but the inside, you have no idea what that person is
No,
going through. So
no.
instead of being mean and judging right away and saying, oh, well, you look fine, you don't have mental illness, how about have some compassion and understanding and saying, what are you going through? How
Right.
is it really feeling inside? Let me listen. And
Yes.
I don't mean listen to reply. I mean listen to actually understand the person.
Right.
And that's what I got from the little bit that I read, you know, because I like to jump around when I read a book. I read the
Yes.
beginning, then I read the end, then I go in the middle, then I go back to the beginning. I read a book really weird, but at the end I get the whole book read. And what
Right.
I got from your book, Yasmin, was the transformation
Mm-hmm.
from the 1950s and 60s to
Mm-hmm.
today's world,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So you have children. What have you shown your children that is different than what you were grown up in?
So that's one of the what should I say? That's one of the things that I would say I always struggled with, being an immigrant. And if you speak to other immigrants too, they'll probably say that they have the same experience. How much of my values and culture to inculcate without repressing them, because they are not really back in Sri Lanka. They are in the United States, and I understand that they have to adapt and live this life. But at the same time, I want to tell them, yes, this take what's good here, but there's a lot of good where I came from too. So don't just discard that. And I try to sort of make them understand the importance of community, of helping, of sharing, that it shouldn't be all about you, or me. That doesn't lead to happiness. Yeah.
So teaching culture in today's world, come back to 1950 and 60.
Yeah.
how has that transformed for you?
For me, you mean because the culture in the United States? It has what I find is good about what I really appreciate about the culture in the United States is two things. One is it's a culture of second chances, in the sense that like we were a British colony, and I don't know about the other European countries, but very often when we were growing up, there was like a road that you had to go. You do this, then you do this, then you do this. But in the United States, I found, for instance, I was an English major and I just switched to psychology because I really was interested. Those opportunities don't come very often in other countries. You kind of set in your educational goals, like when you graduate high school, it's pretty much determined. So I really like that, as I said, this is the country of second chances. You can have a second chance. And the other thing I have to say, the thing that really, the United States is also a very strong champion of individual rights, which I really appreciate. And I think I have a, a more developed sense of individual, like to respect the human rights of other people because I'm here. It's, I'm not saying it's perfect here. Nobody's saying it is perfect, but it did open me up to that.
Well, that's one thing I want everyone out there to understand. All countries have their issues. All
Yeah,
countries bring the negative and a positive.
right,
It doesn't matter where you come from. If you come from the east end, the west end, the north end, the south end,
right,
there's issues in every country.
right,
But when we start working together and start understanding one another, then the problems seem to ease away. You
right.
know, um, I'm a huge humanitarian, and everyone asks me, Miss Liz, do you believe that humanity is coming back? No, I don't, because the negative gets so much food, it gets fed so much that the
Mm-hmm,
positive is struggling to hold on. And that's where
mm-hmm,
the mental illness is coming in. Like you said, the isolation,
mm-hmm.
being locked in. When we all got locked in for COVID, our minds went to a different location. They went to different spots for
Yes.
everybody out there around the globe, not just
Mm-hmm,
Canada, not just US, around the globe.
mm-hmm,
Everybody was affected.
mm-hmm,
And we put people in jail
mm-hmm,
and isolate them because of crimes that they commit. So all of us were put into this jail. That's what I call it, a jail. And we were all isolated from our loved ones, from
mm-hmm,
our jobs, from our community, from our, our towns. We had no more interaction with people. So when we were allowed to go out again, we were confused and we were scared and the fear was there. So it's almost like coming to a new country again, meeting the people again, meeting your community again,
mm-hmm,
because so many people were divided, right?
mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about is your story. It brings people together, you know. Stay,
Yeah,
daughter, because you can look at the word stay as a positive as well.
right.
Stay, my girl. Stay strong.
Yes.
Stay true to your values. Stay true
Right.
to, your you can go to the States to get your education, but stay true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got from the title of the book after I started reading the book, because I was just like, no, her father was just saying, stay true to
Right.
you.
Yeah, because he quite sort of he had a reason to think that the world is dangerous for women in many ways when you go out. So it's not like it was all about repression. But we have to negotiate that. We have to say, yes, we have to look after ourselves, but we also need to move forward and be educated and have agency so that if we had to deal with life, we know we are equipped to deal with life.
So, Yasmin, we have a few questions here for you on the Muslim for the
Mm-hmm,
praying and for marriage.
mm-hmm,
They're asking, uh, do you pray
mm-hmm.
in I'm guessing there's a tradition or belief on how many times you pray a day. Do you go to the
Right.
mosque?
Yes. You have the tradition is you pray 5 times a day. Um, though I'm not a observant Muslim, I'm more into like mindfulness meditation and more like a different spiritual path. But yes, they do. They do. And that's, when you pray 5 times a day, especially the men, they come to the mosque. Not all of them can come 5 times a day. That really builds community when you're doing something 5 times a day. And so many people in the world doing it at the same time.
So is there a reason for the number five?
Not that I know of. It was just part of the real. It's just that was the way it was revealed, that you pray 5 times a day to the prophet.
And your other question is pre-marriage. Are there pre-marriages in Sri Lanka?
Arranged marriages, do you mean?
Yep.
Oh, yes, yes. In the Muslim community, especially, till very recently, most marriages were arranged. Even now, I would say the vast majority of Muslim marriages in Sri Lanka and even in the rest of the world, they're arranged. But with women going out into the world, more women are choosing their partners too. Um, and and if I may say a word about that, not all arranged marriages are bad. There are many happy arranged marriages.
And that's what I mean. Like we have to we can't just put negative out there, right? We got to
Right,
put some positive. And
right.
sometimes, your arranged marriage is somebody maybe that you fall in love with, somebody that you
Later.
really enjoy spending time with.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sure it's odd, like until you get to know each other, but maybe you grew up together and you knew each other anyway. So,
But also, it's not just any man, the person that you marry is somebody that has been vetted, has been shown, this is a suitable person. And so it is odd, but in a way you feel like, okay, there's a commitment here. This man has said he will be married to you, are going to be married to him. So it's in that culture, it didn't seem odd. It seemed like that's the way it was done. And you had once again, you had the whole family and community supporting you on that. This is you committed to this. You can't, it gives you a lot of safety. I mean, once again, arranged marriages, any number of arranged marriages that are not so good, but there are many that are good because I think there's a lot of safety and commitment.
I'm so glad that we're putting this positive out there, right? Because we got to stop scaring everybody with with stuff. We really got to just get the information out there and show that there are positive and negative. It's
Yes,
just like if you fell in love with some guy or some woman and you got married and it didn't work out.
right,
It's even if you're not an arranged marriage, you commit to each other, but you fall out. It just doesn't work.
right.
Sometimes people are just not meant to be together. you
Mm-hmm.
know I really appreciate you, Yasmin, for bringing all this information. So all the little girls out there and all the listeners out there, if you're tuning in and you want to really know how you can change the mindset, put some positive into the negative.
Right,
If you got a negative situation, look at the positives, do the pros and cons, and see how you can find a solution. If you can't find a solution, work towards a solution. And that's what I got from your story, Yasmin, is the solution of education. The solution of I'm going to show people it can get done. Like your grandma, 100 years prior, could not read and write, and here you are to show that you can 100 years later.
yeah.
So, do you have daughters or sons?
I have 3 sons.
Oh, so you have no daughters.
No, I have no sons.
So how has it been to teach them the culture since they're boys?
Um, you know, I, I think the culture that I want do, because the restrictions didn't apply to them. The culture that I did try to teach, and I hope I've succeeded at least to a certain extent, is yes, education and career is important. So is your family, and so is family and community and the extended family. And like my brother and sister-in-law were here recently, and my oldest son is in Seattle, I'm in Boston, but I said, no, you need to come and see your uncle. This is your uncle. you know those are the kinds of ways I try to sort of instill the culture, because I think that's important.
Well, it's really important that we keep the community together, right? And keep the
Mhm,
cultures
mhm.
going, because when you're no longer here, the boys have to continue the culture.
Yes, yes.
So I want to get into your tea. I think it's a good time to ask you. So,
Okay.
Yasmin, if I give you the TEA, what words would you give me for a T?
So the words that are the T would be total and transcendent in the sense, okay, and should I explain? And E is for educational, and A is for accessibility. So
Oh, I like it. Now, you want to tell me why you gave me those three words? And
yes,
I love your T.
thank you. So total and transcendent means everybody deserves education. There shouldn't be a difference, geographical, because you're in a rural area or urban area, or because you're a man or a woman. It needs to transcend all those differences and be total education. And the second word is education, no, which I feel every human being has a right to be educated, to learn to read and write, to be able to negotiate the world, to understand it, to have, and very important also is to have, if they need it, economic independence. Because when you think of like girls being trafficked or whatever part, one of the things is that they're very likely not, they haven't weren't given an opportunity to educate themselves, among other reasons. So that's it. So total and trans is educational accessibility, so access to education.
Oh, I like it. And I just love the T of the T. I love that one because I have never gotten that word for a T. And I think it really opens up a door. It really opens up the mind of understanding that we all have the right and deserve the right to learn
Hmm. Hmm.
and grow.
Hmm.
Uh, you got me all choked up here. I just never got that word, and it's like a beautiful flow of tea, guys. I love when the teas are they're really empowering and inspiring, and they give you that push to keep going, to keep
Hmm.
doing.
Hmm.
Because my tea is teaching educational awareness. I'm
Hmm.
teaching that you can educate yourself. You
Hmm.
can be aware of the services out there, the communities out there. Join together, ask questions.
Hmm.
Um, oh, your tea is just you really got me. uh, so I want to get into some of the interviews that you've done. You've done some for BBC.
Hmm.
So how was that for you?
It was good in that I the I was able to explain that I wrote the book not just to, and I'm so glad you make this point, Miss Liz, not just to criticize the community, but to say yes, it needed change. There's change that needs to come by, but there's also a lot that is good. But the BBC interviews are usually very short, so I wasn't able to really expand on that. But it was, I felt like I was very glad for the opportunity. It is the BBC after all.
Well, and that's why I do such a long podcast is
Yes.
because sometimes we need that time frame to get
Hmm.
good
Hmm.
information out.
Hmm.
If we're rushed and we forget things, and then we're all, oh, I forgot that,
Right.
and we need to take the time to just sit, reflect, and recharge and
Yeah.
release and understand the differences in the world,
Right.
just like going to grandma's and having a cup of tea,
Yes.
and just taking that moment to say, let's pause, let's slow down, and
Hmm.
let's figure this out. And that's what I got. Like, that's why your tea is making me so emotional, Yasmin, is because just understanding that we can take that time to learn,
Right.
you know?
Because when the interview is short, you're sort of making just talking points like bullet points, and that can sometimes lead to stereotyping because you don't have the time to explain, you just make, oh, all Muslim communities are all oppressive and they just, crush their women. And I want to say, no, no, no. That's, there's things that need to change, but there's much good there too.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean. Like we have the chance and the time
Yes.
not to get the stereotype in there. We can get the
Yes.
truth out there. We can get the information out there,
Mhm.
and we can educate. And if anybody else would like to know more information, they can educate themselves by asking questions
Mhm.
and by saying, "Oh, I have a question. Can I ask you?" You
Mhm.
know, but I find with interviews, it's like 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, and it's like
Mhm.
you got to get everything in that you wanted to
Mhm.
share in an hour.
Right.
So, what other opportunities have happened for you, Yasmin, since you've been in the United States?
So, well, I think writing my memoir is one of the big opportunities because one of the things about traditional societies is, it demands a lot of loyalty, right? And they don't like it if you say the slightest thing that's like challenging. And I don't know that I would have written the memoir if was still in Sri Lanka. So it's,
Oh,
partly because, you're so much immersed in that community, they would feel like, no, 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 don't say anything about all that.
oh,
Just, you
hush,
know,
hush. Wait, no, 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 don't say that.
don't say any of that, and I think in some ways I got the space to, and I hope I've done a I truly wanted to be fair. I wanted to say this, I don't want it to be a stereotypical, story about this is all about oppression. But I think that freedom and that space, and that's what's good about the United States, is you do have that, that people, the freedom of speech is one of your fundamental rights. So that's how that opportunity came because I'm the United States.
It's really interesting that you said that if you would have been in Sri Lanka, that you wouldn't have wrote the memoir.
Hmm. I don't
It
think I would have.
is there a reason? Like, was it because of fear,
Because
because of
not
judgment?
not it would have been very uncomfortable, to say the least. Like, even being in the United States, I have got a little bit of a pushback from people that I know in Sri Lanka, and saying, no, but that's not, that's not what the holy book says, or that's, you've taken it out of context or something. And what I say is, well, you can write your own book then about what you think about this. This is my opinion.
I say
I'm
it
not,
all the time to people.
yeah,
If you don't like my book, write your own.
yes, because this is not an academic paper. This is my perspective. But I think there's some kind of a freedom and courage that I think that comes from being here rather than in a very traditional society.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, and I like that attitude. When we write our stories, especially when our personal stories, and
Mhm.
someone says, "Oh, I wouldn't have done that," well, that then write yours. Because maybe you've seen it in a different aspect than I did.
Right.
Maybe you went through something different than I did. So go ahead, write your book. And let's share each other's book.
Yes.
Instead of being so fast to judge and say, "Don't do that, don't do that."
Right.
Shh. Y- y-
But I think that whoever writes the story, for me personally, the people I write about are not there can't defend themselves in the book. So I felt I really needed to be as fair as possible. I didn't want to take this attitude that, oh, look at me, I'm the victim and I'm everything, and here's the no, they didn't. I tried not to do that because I don't think it's fair to do that. Everybody, even my father or the community, they had reasons for thinking the way they do. They have reasons for acting the way they do. I can say I may not necessarily agree, but I understand, you know. I didn't want to make it a black and white, everything bad on one side and everything good on the other.
Well, and there's traditions too, and
Mhm.
generational cycles and
Mhm.
patterns.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
hard. Like when you break that cycle, like that ripple effect, saying,
Yes.
you know what, I want to be the first in the family that goes to school. I want to
Mhm.
be the first in the family that doesn't have an arranged marriage. I want to be the
Mhm.
first,
Mhm. Mhm.
that first that
Mhm.
makes that ripple
Mhm.
sometimes gets judged because they don't understand, or
Mhm.
they take it to heart and think that it's a personal attack on them as a
Mhm.
parent or as a
Mhm. Mhm.
community, and
Mhm.
it's not.
No.
It's just you saying, I would like more, I want
Yeah.
different.
Right. But I think it helped my father though but I do understand why you have a different opinion. I'm not saying you're doing this because you just want to, to repress and keep. So, but even though you have that opinion, I still would like to, go to university.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that we all understand that no matter what, where we come from, right?
Mhm,
Our
mhm.
parents, they grew up in a different time zone, so they have different beliefs, different traditions, different cultures,
Mhm,
and maybe when they grew up it was completely different. So
mhm,
as we're raising our children, the
mhm,
cultures change, the
mhm,
traditions change.
mhm.
People come in and they say, okay, well, we're gonna have steak instead of pork chops tonight, or we're
Right,
gonna have chicken
right.
instead of beef. You know what I
Yes,
mean? So we change as we grow and
right.
as we go into different situations and different things. I think your story is really incredible. It's empowering. I really recommend everyone who's listening to the podcast, who will watch the replay, to go out and grab a copy, because the story is written really nice. I love the flow of your story,
Thank you.
Yasmin. It's an easy read on a hard topic. It's not heavy, like you said. You didn't do the victim, you didn't do the.
No.
And when we share personal stories, yes, our lives are hard, yes, we go through things, but when we make the stories lighter, the readers actually say, I felt the pain, but I understand why you went this way
Mhm.
you know
Thank-
they don't need to hear all the abuse or all of the hardships or all of that. They understand by reading the story and understanding the story. So I want to get into, we have a few minutes left. We're almost at the hour here. I want to get into, I asked you one word to give me that describes you. And you actually gave me two. So you gave me easygoing. So why that word?
because I think I've, all through life, or maybe that's just my personality, I don't sweat the small stuff or try not to.
I like.
Because I think there's so much, um, and I become more so even as that's one of the things that I used to teach the clients as a therapist. There's so many little things you don't have to, sweat them all. You can just, the particular uh, therapy I did, it was with, borderline women diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And this is particularly, dialectical based therapy. They talk about the Teflon mind.
Oh,
The Teflon mind, just let it glide over you. If can you see why it's easy? So it's the person, Marsha Linehan, the psychologist who formulated, asks the clients, don't get all tensed over everything, just let it, you just take your time, it'll glide over. I mean, there are certain things you do need to not glide over, but lots of other things. So I like to think that I have a Teflon mind. It doesn't
I, I
stick.
love it. I like the Teflon wine. I've been diagnosed with BPD, so I'm really curious about this. Maybe we'll have to talk after the show and understand that a little bit more. I want to understand why you got into the psychology.
Partly because I think, partly, as I said at the beginning, because I was, among people with very different religious beliefs, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. I think I began to notice, like how does the culture impact human behavior? Like what's right in my house is not right in your house. How's that? Why is that? I mean, not everything, but many things. What you are allowed to do, I'm not allowed to do. Why is that? And so that I think that led me to psychology. Like I really wanted to understand human behavior. What is it? What are its roots? Where does it come from? And then, how can people help themselves? And one of the ways is to understand where you come from, right? To understand yourself, to know thyself. So that's that's how I got interested in psychology.
I think that's really cool, because we need to really start to understand why one household can do it and the other one can't. And maybe
Hmm.
sometimes one household wants to do it and the other house doesn't want to, you know. Uh, it's really inspiring on how the mind works
Hmm.
and how our stories take us into
Hmm.
different journeys and different
Hmm.
paths.
Hmm.
So, coming to the US for education, did you know that you wanted psychology, or did you learn
Yes,
that on your
I,
way?
on the way, I did get, I was doing graduate studies in English, but I really, really felt like, there was a calling, like, some jobs are careers are a calling, right? I felt called to really understand uh, the working of the human mind. And then I said, how can I put this to use? How can I help myself primarily first, and other people? And that's how I find it was very hard work, but it's also very rewarding work, because you're connecting with somebody and hoping that maybe you can be, like you say, stay for them, stay there for them while they
Oh,
go through
see,
whatever.
I like how you did that.
Yes.
The word stay, right? We took that stay that was heavy at the beginning of the show and we
Mhm.
lightened it right up to the end. I really like that. We can stay in order to grow, in
Yeah.
order to educate. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It doesn't mean you're stuck.
No.
Like, when you hear the word stay, it's not like a command. It's look at it as a positive way of turning it around.
Right.
I really like how you did that at the end, Yasmin, as you brought the heavy stay at the beginning of the topic, and then at the end we lightened it up. And that's just how tea is, right? We just lighten it up. We add the milk, we add the sugar, we just sweeten it up a little bit.
Right.
So we're almost at the end here. I want to ask you. I asked you your favorite color, and you gave me the color blue, Yasmin. So why blue?
The sky is blue.
So what
um,
is it about the sky that
the
really?
openness, I think, you look up, and it's open, and um, um, it's inviting in some ways. It hints about things beyond what you have experienced. That it's a sky. So
Absolutely. I like that you said openness because I was just like, I want to know why the sky. Because a lot of people, they say the sky, they say the water, but there's a reason why we go to it or why we
mhm,
look at it,
mhm,
you
mhm.
know. And I was waiting for it because I knew it was coming. I knew the openness was coming. So, any final words that you have for everybody out there, Yasmin?
I just to reiterate, the takeaway I would like people to have from the book is, yes, to understand that human rights is essential, but also to see, even as it is, not to take away that that traditional societies are all, there's nothing of value that they can offer. They do. And so the takeaway would be how we can do make use of the best of both worlds, if we can, to have the freedom and the opportunities of the modern world, but also if we can do it without entirely losing the connections and the community support of the more traditional societies.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciated having you tonight and sharing this. I love this conversation. I love when we have deep conversations and the tea just flows nicely. So if anybody would like to reach out to you, Yasmin, how can they reach you?
That's what you have here. The is my website, and there's a connect page. I mean, a connect uh, place that they can write to me. I'll be very happy to hear from anyone who, you know, wants to write. Yes, it's staydaughter.com. As you get.
So again, I want to thank you, Yasmin, and I want to close up September with just open the mind, have some openness to understanding different cultures. Ask questions when you're not sure. Ask questions, and let's build a community. Let's build the education through asking questions, getting connected, and let's build stronger family unity. That's the goal that I wanted with this tea time was to bring people together to understand culture, that let's take the positive, not the negative, and let's really make a difference. And that's how we do it on tea time is we really just open the doors to understanding one another when we share our TEAs. And that's what my guests do. They give me a different tea. Some of them they give me the three words, some of them they switch it and they tell me different words. That's okay because that's their tea, and that's how we serve tea. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody. We all have different stories, we all have a different reason, and we all have a different blessing. So, on that note, we're closing up September and we're jumping into October. So, October, if you'd like to see the guests lined up, you can check out Miss Liz's Facebook page. The video is there, the poster is there. You can see all the guests that are coming. And for October, we're doing changing colors. because fall is coming, the leaves are changing, and the topics will change. There's 12 different new topics. We also will have a reunion show December 21st for all of the Tea Time guests that want to come back and see Miss Liz. So stay tuned. There's a lot of goodies coming. And I will see everybody in October because September is done. So again, thank you, Yasmin, for sitting with me. And thank you to all the listeners and viewers out there. I really appreciate all of you. Without all of you, I would not be able to do what I do today.